Alright, so I just got a big rock, an Arrma Nero big rock, and I also have a Traxxas Summit. If you look on my channel, there's a lot of videos about my Summit and what I've done to it. So I just thought I would compare the differentials because they're the only two locking differentials in the remote control hobby, except for the TRX-4, which is kind of smaller. It's a scalar type thing, but the Summit and the Big Rock are the only two, I guess, 10th or 8th scale monster trucks that have locking diffs. And I know that the Summit is known for its weak differential components, and it's a common problem when people go brushless. So I just thought I'd take apart the diffs, compare them, show you. I think it's obvious who will win, but I just figure I might as well do it anyways. So first things first, this is my Summit diff. I've done a lot of things to it. It has an HR aluminum case, and the internals are from Leading Edge Machining. But as far as the size and everything, it's still stock. Nothing's been changed. So this is the Summit diff, and this is the Big Rock diff, the Nero diff. This little part right here is where the shift servo is located, so it's kind of just like that is the actual diff part, and this is just for the shifting. The Summit diff uses an external servo that moves this lever. You'll see once I take it apart. So just thought I'd do that, but right off the bat you can see the Arrma diff is a lot bigger. It's around just over 3 inches, kind of rough length measurement by 1 3/4. Actually, it's very similar there in the Summit. The Summit's just a little bit smaller, 1.71. Lengthwise, it's about just over 2. So the Arrma is almost a full inch longer. The output shafts. Actually, let's switch to millimeter for this. Yeah. So the Traxxas, they're, I'm gonna say 6 mm. Yeah. Input and output is 6 mm. On the Arrma, it is 7 mm. So now I'm just going to take the cases off and we'll dig inside and compare them. Before we do that though, the Arrma only has 3 screws holding it together. And the Traxxas Summit has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 screws holding it together. So first, as far as case holding togetherness, I think I'm gonna give it to the Summit, but this one obviously there's no problems with it coming apart or anything, and it's actually a lot easier to get the Arrma diff out of the truck compared to the Summit. So in that regard, the Arrma wins. Alright, so now we got that over with. I forgot that this is an aluminum case, so I Loctited the screws, so it's pretty tough to get it apart, but so the Traxxas one splits in half like this, with kind of a top and a bottom, I guess. And the Arrma Diff splits in half like this. So there's 2 screws around the pinion, so it's super strong supported there, which the Traxxas one kind of isn't. Sometimes the pinion shreds out, so I don't know. I don't know who wins there. I'll just call that a tie. Let's get these shims off and put them aside before I lose them. Actually, no, I'll do that later. So yeah, it splits apart like this, and you kind of got to be careful. The wire's right in there, so you just kind of pull it down. And both these are used, so they'll be gross inside, but I'll try and clean them up as I go. Oh, okay. So, you probably just watched me struggling for a little bit to get the servo out. So, they're really wedged in there, which, I don't know. I'm gonna say Traxxas wins on servo removal ease. While we're talking about the servos, here's the Arrma one. It's built into Diff. Here's the Traxxas one, and it's a lot bigger. I don't know, I haven't really read too much about guys burning these out unless they put higher voltage to them, but I don't know. Pretty little servo. It doesn't have to do much, but still pretty little, so I don't know, I think I'm going to give it to Traxxas on this one. And also another thing is there's a little bit of flex. I might be wrong. Yeah, there's a little bit of flex. It kind of does have a built-in servo saver type thing here. And the Traxxas one does too, so that's a tie. Okay, so now that we have, actually, these are the arms. They're pretty much the same. Traxxas one's servo or bearing supported. The Arrma one is servo supported, so that's a tie. That bearing's still good. Okay, so now that we're done talking about the servos and the shifting, let's get into the good stuff. Okay, first things first. The Arrma is supported by just 2 bearings, one on each side. The Traxxas is supported by 3 bearings, 3 different sizes. A big one over here, a large one over here, and a smaller one over here. So a number of bearings, Traxxas wins, but the bearings on the Arrma are way bigger. Okay, so the ring gear on the Traxxas is approximately 36.3 millimeters. And on the Big Rock Nero, it is 47.3 millimeters, so clear winner there. The bearing is 17, probably 17 millimeters, yeah. And the other one is 17 as well. So 2 17 millimeter bearings. And even the big bearing on the Traxxas is only 16 millimeters. It's actually better than I thought. But then the other side is supported by a 12 millimeter. But then they also have this large 27 millimeter bearing. So not quite sure how to call it. The Traxxas has more bearings, but they are smaller, except for the one which is bigger. So I don't know, hard to say. The other interesting thing is you can see on the Arrma one, there is kind of a machined out groove on the diff cup or whatever. And it looks, I don't know if you can see that, it looks like there's a groove in the case too. So it's like they almost could put a third bearing in their Traxxas style, but I guess they decided against it, or they were going to in design and then didn't in production or something. But it's interesting. Somebody should measure it and maybe put one in there. Be pretty cool. So in terms of bearings, kind of a toss-up. But when it comes to pinion bearings, there's two in the Traxxas Summit. Well, anyways, there's two in the Traxxas Summit. You can kind of see one in the end, one in the inside. Kind of stuck. And there's also two on the Arrma Nero. The Nero ones are about, I guess I didn't get all my parts mixed up here. It's actually two different sizes. I thought they were the same. So a 22 millimeter and a 19 millimeter on the big rock. And I'm just gonna do it in here. I think they're probably the same 12. Yeah, they're about two 12 millimeter bearings. So that one's a clear winner to the big rock. So here's the two parts that make the locking diffs into locking diffs. They both operate on the same principle, where they have well, not quite the same principle, but they slide in and make it so the spider gear has to rotate the same speed as the diff cup, I believe. So this one has kind of key slots where it slides into the back of the diff here, and then this pin locks it to the shaft. And the Arrma one has these pins which slide through the cup, and I think they actually engage straight into this output shaft. So that's just kind of a fun fact. Something to note is the Traxxas Arrma, or the Traxxas Summit diff cup is plastic when it comes stock. This is an aftermarket leading edge machining one. So the size on that is about 22.7 millimeters. And on the big rock, it is 30.8. So starting to be a lot bigger difference. The main problem with the Summit is the spider gears. So as you'll see, it's more impressive inside. So I'm just going to take these apart and we can take a look at the internals of the diff. Alright, so they both had 4 screws, screwing them into the diff cup, I'm going to call it. Yeah, similar screws. The Arrmas are bigger. That's interesting, there's not much grease in here. Okay. So they both have a gasket, obviously. But the big difference is the Traxxas diff has 2 spider gears. And the Arrma diff has 4 spider gears. And I'm willing to bet that these spider gears are probably larger in the Arrma. So let's investigate. So we'll just take one out. The crossbar is a 2-piece design. So this slot fits into the other slot, so I don't know, that's The Arrma's or the Traxxas is a one piece because there's only two. So this is the entire spider gear assembly of the Traxxas Summit, and this is half of the spider gear assembly of the Nero. Loose measurements. They actually look pretty similar now. The Traxxas has this big bar just to kind of align it in the diff cup. The end caps are bigger on the Nero. Look to be about 12 millimeters on the Nero. And about 14.3 millimeters on the Summit. That's a surprise. I mean, there are only two of them compared to the Nero's four, so obviously the Nero wins. But yeah, I thought these would be, they look smaller. They're kind of a different design. They're kind of triangular. And these ones have a flat back, so come this far, we might as well just compare them. So they're different design, but they are quite similar. Traxxas does have a slightly larger outside diameter though. Probably hard to see with all this grease. And my phone's freaking out with the light, but so yeah, that's interesting. I'm still gonna give it to the Arrma though because there's four of them. So this gear is about 14. Let's say 14 millimeters on the Summit and almost 20 on the Nero. So Nero wins there. And yeah, the inside gear is a lot. It's almost, I'm willing to bet it's probably the same 20 millimeter on the Nero. And on the Summit, it's pretty much spider gear sized at about, well, it's about 13 point-ish. So Nero wins there too. So I think that about wraps it up now that I have two diffs and pieces on my table. Overall, I think the Summit does have some nice features and some semi-redeeming qualities, I guess. I mean, it was the first locking diff, and it's been around since 2008 or 2009, I think. The servo is mounted externally, which I think is kind of nice and better. This internal servo, you're stuck with using the Arrma one, and it's pretty small and it's hard to get out. So Traxxas wins there. Really, that's the main winning feature of the Summit. But overall, obviously, the Arrma Nero diffs are way better. They're appropriately sized for the vehicle they're on. The bearings are way bigger. This piece is a little maybe sketchier. I've heard people having problems snapping these, but I've also heard of people snapping these as well. So, but just in my personal opinion, this toothy keyed slot system seems to be a bit stronger than these pins, but overall, the Nero wins.